Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Kodak Slide and Scan. This is kind of a neat little device that lets you take your old photo negatives and run them through this little machine here by sliding them in. And as you can see, that negative becomes a positive, and you just push the button here at the top and you can capture a digital image onto its SD card and then move on to the next photograph. And what's really neat about this thing is that it is very easy to operate. You don't have to futz around with settings on your computer. You just run the film through, push the button, and you've got yourself a photograph that you now can convert digitally without a lot of effort. Now, the quality on this, I'll say up front, is not going to be anywhere near some of those higher-end scanners you might be looking at as an alternative to this. But if most of your photos on negatives are not works of art, this might be good enough to at least get the images into something that you can send to friends and family or put up on social media. And I think for a lot of folks, it might be adequate. But I want to make clear that this is not an archival product. And I've been playing with devices like this over the years, and I've never been all that impressed. This one doesn't impress me, but it's gotten to a point where I can declare part of it being usable, and therefore it was worthy of putting a review together. So we're going to be taking a closer look at this as we work our way through the review here. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one has reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. And of course, this is not a sponsored review. So let's get into it now and see what this Kodak scanner is all about. Now, the price on this will vary widely based on where you're buying it from and sales and whatnot. Right now on Amazon, it's selling for about $145 on sale, but I've seen it for as much as $180. So shop around and you'll get the right price that you're looking for. Now, as far as film compatibility is concerned, it will work with 35mm film like you saw here. It works with color and black and white film. However, there's no film setting for the type of film that you're using, so it's going to try its best to automatically guess the right color temperature and color balance, but you'll probably find yourself doing a lot of adjustment after the scan to get it right. Higher end equipment, of course, gives you the ability to tell it what you're putting in for film so things get adjusted properly before you get started with it. Additionally, it supports 110 film, and I'll show you some scans from that in a minute, along with 126. It also supports 50mm slides, and what you get in the box here, I'll give you my overhead view, is a little adapter for each type of film. So right now, I've got the 35mm adapter installed in here. With that slid out, this is what you would use the slides with. So you just put your slides in one at a time and scan them. I unfortunately don't have slides to scan, so I'm not going to be able to demo that. But the experience that you'll see with slides will be very similar to what you just saw with the color negatives. And they have different film trays here for different types of film. So for example, this is the 110 film here. Then when you go to scan, what you do is you go to your film type here, you hit OK, and you tell it what you've got. So if you've got a black and white negative, you would select that. Color here, or your 50mm slide there, and they've got arrow buttons here for selecting the mode that you want to go into. And you click the OK button and specify the film type, and you're off to the races here, scanning in your pictures. Now, this requires an SD card to operate, and it does not come with the SD card. So you will need to get yourself a regular sized SD card for this to work. What's nice, though, is that it will write things out to the SD card just like a digital camera does. So when you plug it into your computer, it will recognize all of the photos very, very quickly for you. Your power button is up here. You do have some controls here that I'll demonstrate as we do a few more scans. And then on the back, you've got an HDMI output for connecting it up to a television. I'll demo that in a little bit as well. When you do have the HDMI connected, it disables the internal display. And you have your USB port here for power. You can transfer images from this to your computer with the USB port, but it won't scan directly to the computer. You need the SD card for this to work. And then when you've got it booted up here, what you do is just tell it what you've got inside. So what we're going to tell it is that I've got a color negative here, and I'm going to select the 135 option for 35mm film, and I'll hit the button, and then we are in scan mode. One thing I would suggest you do is just look at the output when you first go into this mode to make sure that everything is uniformly the same color. If it isn't, they give you a little wand that you can stick into the unit here to clean off any dust that might have appeared on the surface between your last session. And I have found things like little hairs and dust particles get pushed in as you're scanning film, especially doing it rapidly. And then, of course, you can see the quality of the pictures, mostly that come off of my camera. A lot of them are blurry here. This was actually from a class trip back in 1994 to New York City, which is a lot of fun to see some of my friends who I still keep in touch with to this day here. So this is my friend Matt here, and we had a photography class that we were doing. So I'm going to just line up the picture here. Again, not a great picture, but good enough. Now, what you're going to see at the top here are a row of buttons, and if I push this button, I can adjust the brightness of the photo here before I scan it. And then if I go back here, I think, with one of these buttons here, I can then select some of the color settings also. So let's lock this in real quick. I think I have to hit OK. And then if I hit this button, it'll give me different color options. So I can adjust the red, green, and blue layers, but that's it. So it doesn't have any white balance control. It's very basic in what you can adjust here on the device. And I would suggest, given the power of our photo editing tools on the PC, just leave it as is and work as quickly as possible, hit the button, and get the photo in. Again, you're not going to be processing works of art on this. It's just good enough, which I think is kind of what the intent is here, at least for the price point. So as you saw there, I just hit the OK button, and that scanned the image in. One other setting here, and I found this made a bigger difference on black and white photos, is the resolution. Now this has a 13 megapixel sensor built in, but it does some interpolation to bring it up to 22 megapixels, which is kind of a, an upscaling, if you will, as opposed to being a direct optical 22 megapixels. So if you go here to the R button, you can turn the resolution down to 14. Again, I found this made a bigger difference insofar as noise and artifacts are concerned with black and white photos versus color. But if you're not happy with the output at 22, go down to 14. You're not losing all that much resolution. And again, the quality of these images are not going to be all that great in the end, but again, passable, which is why I am very lightly recommending this one. One other note is that it only outputs JPEG files. And although they're large JPEGs, you will see some compression artifacts, especially when you zoom in. It would have been nice to have a TIFF option or something that was not compressed. Let's take a look now and see what the output looks like. All right, so here's the output of the image that we took earlier. Again, this is passable for social media. If you were sending this out on Facebook or something, it would probably be in a window about this size. It would look fine. One thing you'll notice, though, is that there are some oversaturations going on, at least with this 1994 vintage McDonald's supersized cup there. And as you zoom in, you'll see that the details get really soft very, very quickly here. Now, this is the 14 megapixel version of that picture, and I've got the 28 megapixel version here. They don't look much different, and because the sensor is the sensor, you're not going to see a huge variation, especially with the color images. But occasionally, you might get a little more detail out of the 14 megapixel version than the 28 one. But again, this is what you can expect here. It's quick, it's easy, and if you're just looking for that, I think this again will be more passable than some of the other solutions I've looked at in the past. Now, back in the 90s, I shot a lot of black and white film, Tri-X400, a Kodak film, and this is one of the negatives I found in my collection here that I scanned in a little earlier. And as you can see here, it's not bad until you get zoomed in and you can see that things really get muddied out. And I think it's just the quality of the sensor, the JPEG image compression going on. It just doesn't look all that great from a detail perspective. But zoomed out for sharing purposes, again, it's probably adequate. I did find that the 18 megapixel does a little better when you are scanning, so you might want to adjust the resolution down a little bit. I found it did retain a little more detail, maybe just a little bit, than it did on the 22, just because it's not processing as much here. So if we zoom in, we can see there's just slightly more detail on the bird there, a little less noise. So again, on the black and white film, I was finding the 18 was a better setting, at least for Tri-X. And I think partly due to the fact that Tri-X is a very grainy film to begin with, so that was probably throwing off the image sensor. If only this had a TIFF option without compression, I think we might have some better results here. But again, for what it is, I'm not complaining too much given the speed in which you can scan everything. Now, I had one packet of 110 film in my box of negatives. I got to get more at my mother's house. This film is interesting because this was from a trip that I took with my 7th grade class, probably back in 1988 or so, maybe 87. And as you can see here, we saw the Twin Towers, we saw the Statue of Liberty, and then here's all my buddies here. This is not a great quality scan, but it's really more of the film that I used to scan. So what happened was I went on this trip, I brought my little 110 camera with me, I took the pictures and I never got them developed. So I didn't develop that roll of film until probably about 10 or more years later. So this film was not fresh when it was developed, but it was able to at least give us some images that we can pull out, and I'm sure I could do some more adjustments to it. This here, I think, is some dust that got into the sensor. So again, you really want to check that sensor before you start running your pictures through. Otherwise, you'll be going back and doing them all over again here. But this gives you a good idea as to what the 110 capabilities are. And I think if you had a better quality negative, it would look a little better. And remember, that 110 film is very small, so you don't have a lot of resolution to pull out of them. And then you've got the HDMI capture here. So I'm doing this in real time right now, plugged into my video system. I did have some issues capturing this. It must be doing some funky resolution stuff when it switches over to the film mode here, but hooked up to a TV, it should be okay. So you can put your images up on the television if you don't want to scan them at all. And again, you can see just how fast everything is to respond here. So pretty cool stuff, I think. Not perfect, but kind of fun to play around with. So altogether, I was pleased with just how fast this thing works, and that was kind of what I was looking for, was something that can process these images very, very quickly. This, by the way, is my Ford Probe. It really stood out back in the mid-90s there versus all the other stuff on the road. And I have a few lightning round images here I can share with you as well. Again, nothing spectacular here, but it looks pretty close to the prints that I have of these photos, and it's nice to be able to very quickly get them digitized into the computer. But there are, of course, better ways to do it, but those methods tend to take a lot more time and a lot more money. What I would love to see is something that maybe is in the $500 to $600 range that can give you an uncompressed image that can also maybe have a slightly more powerful sensor on board to give you just a little bit more resolution with a little less noise. And I think we're almost there, to the point where we can get something that can work a lot faster than many of the other higher resolution negative scanning options that are out there. But this is pretty good, and I would say probably progress in this product space, but not perfect. That will do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.